He's very unique for a lot of reason. I guess in his 20s, he traveled with a Volkswagen from Calcutta to London or from London to Calcutta. He traveled all over Middle East, except Egypt. Now he will go to Egypt. And I remember one of my friend sent me a link 5 or 6 years back with his work, and I tried to Google his name, but there was not much images. I must say I was quite frustrated. And then one of my friend who were working in Australia, I sent him a link of a book which Tidal published long time back called Indian Ocean Journal. I just saw a few pages in the web and I was really impressed. Then the book was out of print. It was not on sale, but he did manage to get a second-hand copy for me, and I was super happy. And I was looking at the book, and I was fascinated by the way the book was edited, between the relationship with the images, how he have put two images together, and how they were talking to each other. The photos were crazy, the photos were weird, but at the same time it was full of passion. So he is a traveler. His name is Max Spam. He's here with us today. We have his exhibition in this floor, 40 images on two different set of wall, which was quite difficult for us to hang because we are not allowed to pin in Shilpakala. But today we are also very lucky because he is going to show us his new book. Adnan, সামনের পাতাটা একটু সরাই দেবেন? Super Tourist, and it's not published yet. It will be published by a French publisher. I forgot the name, Max, sorry. In next year or this year. So he's going to talk about this book, which is a compilation of work over the last 40 years of Max, but it's concentrating on the latest work. So I'm really happy to present Max Spam here. Please, Max, join us.
Well, thanks for that lovely introduction, and it's such a treat. Let me say right away, it's such a treat to be here in Bangladesh, in Dhaka. I spent a lot of time in old West Bengal, but I never made it across the border. But now that I'm here, I really have to come back and spend more time. With this book, Super Tourist, the deal is a quote from Susan Sontag. It's not referring to me as being, a person with superhuman qualities, like I don't need the airplane, I just put my suit on and fly from one country to another, how I wish I could do that. The airplane here is going to be in silver, and this is going to be red down here. It just looks a bit weird that way. This is the publisher that was going to do it, but I managed to switch horses in terms of publishers over the last few years, because as with a lot of books, there's many a slip between the cup and the lip. You think you've got a publisher nailed down, and they tend to have the attention span of a chicken when it comes to, your own project, which you see as the most important thing on the planet. So, but right now, I really do have a very good French publisher interested in it. He's already published books of mine, so it looks like the book will come out probably maybe this year. I could get lucky, but most likely next year. It's a work of 4 chapters, and the way it goes is, as with a lot of my books, it's about groupings of work, but most importantly about how the double pages play off each other. And in this case, you've got the text by Susan Sontag, which looks like it's written in Russian. I don't know if you can read it, but I just think we have to forget about that. So the book's dedicated to my two beautiful children, like this lovely girl here, who's my daughter, and my little boy, because they're not little anymore, they're very big people, oopsie. This was taken in a photo booth in the metro station in Piraeus in Greece in the early 90s, and it was one of those old school photo booths that actually changed your physiology. I mean, the look, the change of the shape of your skull, you know, it was one of those magic photo booths, of which almost none exist anymore. Here, with the cursor, this is me as a young boy who didn't need glasses, actually. About a year later, I had to start wearing spectacles. This is my first motor car. It was made in 1949, exactly the same year I was made. These are, you know, some of my surfing buddies. And really, this is where I started my traveling life. It was looking for, you know, the perfect wave, which is, of course, the dream and fantasy of any young or old surfer. That's still an enduring thing. What not for me. I gave surfing up for travel. I couldn't fit both of them inside my head. The introduction chapter is written by a really great young writer, the best young writer on photography in Australia, called Robert Cook. It features some of my map collage works as well, you know, which are unique works. They're quite big, probably about the same size as the reproduction of this map, just out there in the art gallery. Some of these works I've sold and don't have it in my collection anymore, like this one. This is Paris, you know, without motor cars and actually without the Eiffel Tower, which is a bit weird. So, you know, this map was made before that beautiful structure went up that defined Paris. This one here, it's a similar kind of map, bird's eye view of London, and also it's about famous English writers, and there's one or two famous English writers in those photos as well. Because when I was working for a French news agency, I got to photograph some notable English writers for Liberation newspaper. Map of England, map of Everest, and you know, end of the intro bit, which is this picture here, which was shot in Valparaiso last year at an exhibition. This is a very big photograph of mine, and this lady was in the men's toilet, cleaning the toilet when I was in there, which was just outside the gallery, and I was so taken by her. I said, look, you know, please, you know, drop that toilet brush and come in and model for me. And of course, you know, she was totally up for it. I love models like that. We all love models like that. Okay, so first chapter is collage the bifold. So this is really about my bookmaking thing. Books are incredibly important to me. I'm totally a book rat, and the idea of, you know, making books. I'd go on a journey for a month, say in Europe, and I'll make a book of my experience, print it on inkjet paper and glue it back to back, and actually construct a book and edit it as if, you know, I was a publisher. And collage work is important too, like you know, the maps, like works that can contain and compress photographs and written ideas that kind of bounce off each other and sort of value add each other. In this series of work, these are bifold albums, so they're albums that open out like accordions. So they're all blank on the back, and they kind of fold in on each other, and you just tape them on the back, and it acts as a natural hinge. And the works are hand-colored, so hand-colored with oil paint. I find oil paint is the best medium to use with hand coloring, because you can smear it in a way that blends in with the with the black and midtones in black and white photos. And if you're working with, particularly with matte photos, it's probably the best surface to work on. But I'm talking about real photos. I'm talking about silver gel photos. I'm not talking about, fake inkjet representations of photographs. And so in this case, the images are of homeless kids in London. I did a story for a French left-wing weekly magazine that was doing an article on homeless kids living in the West End in London. And the postcard thing is kind of another embellishment of mine that is suggestive of postcards from a particularly cruel aspect of London, downtown London, because if you go to downtown London, there's still a lot of teenagers living on the streets, and it's not particularly nice during midwinter, and a society that can afford to not have them there. So anyway, other works like this incredibly brave shot of me photographing the eagle. People ask me, am I a good rock climber? How fierce was the eagle? Of course, it's a stuffed eagle in a museum, but I don't tell them that. I took a photograph of my son as bad boy in swimming in the Indian Ocean, and kind of a sex toy machine, vending machine in Tokyo, and still life AK-47 in Pakistan. That box of coal that I bought in, I think it must have been Madurai in South India. And, museums, spend a lot of time in museums photographing objects. Get girls through hypnotism, it really does work. So be very careful. So another work, handheld things are important to me, offered objects. We do that, we've done it since we were children in primary school. This act of revelation that involves the hand, the tactile thing of touch. And double portraits. I've been shooting double portraits since 1971. I'm still shooting them now, and that's really an homage to a photographer, August Sander, a German photographer who photographed people in Berlin between the First World War and the Second World War. A brilliant photographer who inspired me to do this kind of longitudinal study on two people confronting the world together. Standing stones in England, I was kind of, weirdly fascinated with for some bizarre reason. I lived in Brunei for quite a while. We lived next to a cemetery, and so I was always drawn back to that cemetery, and these, Chinese families who had migrated from China to Southeast Asia to, make some money, make their fortune, and the photographic depictions of them in porcelain, the porcelain photographic process is really quite beautiful. This is the major piece I did when I was doing a residency in New York in 2010. I had a studio in Brooklyn. Do any of you guys know that this famous Searchers tune called Don't Throw Your Love Away? I could sing it to you, but it would embarrass you guys as much as me, so I won't go there. I should have a kind of the YouTube thing, because it's a great tune. I think it's a great tune anyway. And I think the lyrics are pretty good, and I think they were pretty good for really defining my New York in those 3 months. There's murderers there, there's heroes, there's dead heroes, there's ridiculous Mel Gibson, They're all in there, you know, the usual suspects. And here we're looking at some, you know, for instance, pages out of my Southeast Asian journal, a journal that ran to a lot of pages because it covered about a decade and a half. And it takes this really just using rubber stamps and stamp pads. My Burmese journal, handwriting and just taped in resin-coated paper. And a whole bunch of nude paintings, mostly from Islamic countries for some bizarre reason. I don't know how that plays out, but so, you know, 2 double pages of stamps and people in various stages of carnal embrace and undress. And then just some straight, you know, album of hand-colored black and white photos. Some dating, like this baby on the right here. I shot when I was a student of photography at art school in London in 1971. Okay, so chapter 2, Old World v New World. That's really about my Australian work, the New World. A little bit of New York as well, because that's the New World as well. And of course the Old World being Europe. And these are, you know, 2 areas I've spent a lot of time doing field work in. I always find it tough to photograph in Australia. Well, because I'm from Australia, and I think a lot of photographers find dealing with their own country perhaps more difficult than if they're somewhere else. But the juxtaposition of Old World, New World images, it struck me as being an intriguing, you know, research process in terms of, you know, what approach do I take in going back into my archive and finding images that can have a meaningful relationship? And I think you need these strategies when you have a big archive and you want to make some sort of sense of it. It's good to have that kind of handle, like, yes, the old world, the new world, you know, that collision that it suggests to, you know, to juice the best images or the best double pages. And so, you know, the alligator on the right, these alligators are protected species in Australia, and they eat a reasonable amount of tourists every year. And so people wonder, you know, what's going on in terms of the protection policy, and, you know, are they proliferating because they're protected? Will we lose, you know, when will tourists become a protected species? And you think, well, the guy taking the photograph of the alligator is being incredibly brave, but of course, it's not a real alligator because he wouldn't be doing that otherwise. He'd be dead. Sorry, just a bit of a technical glitch here. We'll go back to that, get her up. It's not coming up. Oh. It's my fault, I should have highlighted it.
last one, right?
No, it's not the last one. Yep, there we go. Maybe it's going to work now. No, it's not. I'll do it that way. No, I'll just scroll down the side there. Thanks very much. Sorry about that, guys. I shouldn't have touched it. Oopsie. Okay, so here I use my children a lot. I mean, use them, that's the wrong term. You know, I spend a lot of time with my kids, particularly when they were small. I was a house husband. My wife was the main breadwinner in the family. And so, you know, I really benefited from that. I have a very close relationship with my children, and we still travel together. I was just with my son in Paris in November, and whenever I get the opportunity, whenever the clouds part and I get a chance to realize some kind of meaningful picture with them, I just love that, you know. I just love photographing my kids, and I've never grown tired of that. The picture on the left is on the left is my daughter, quite a famous Dutch photographer, just poking his head in on stage right, a guy called Michiel Botman, and we just finished lunch there's this cute little inexpensive restaurant in the Luxembourg Gardens, and my daughter was waiting for us to pay the bill, and she did this balancing thing with the Perrier bottles, and so, you know, I whipped the camera out of my bag, you know, asked her to just move slightly to the right to reveal that. I asked Michiel just to come in, so a bit of stage managing there, but that's a, you know, kind of case study on how I work. And then my daughter's doing a PhD in design, so issues of design are super important to her, and she had this, you know, miniature, quite a famous piece of design, tulip chair, and so, you know, just photographing her with that because of, you know, those personal synergies of where she wants to take her career. And, you know, here I'm working with, you know, picture on the lefty, shooting it with a plastic camera that's worth about $5. And, you know, picture on the right, I'm shooting with Bronica Senza, so, you know, relatively more sophisticated and expensive camera. And I do that a lot too. You know, I take both cameras on a trip with me, and I'll get two different versions of the trip, which is always nice to see when you come home and process the work. These pictures of New York, shot with digital cameras, like this shot here. Couldn't do it with analog. It was just not enough light around, but, you know, when you put that digital technology on it, bingo, away you go. You know, pictures of just random pictures of New York and things that just caught my attention, you know, for a nanosecond. That typical thing that photography gives you, where it presses the pause button on life for just one moment and you nail it photographically. No other art form really can do that, and for me, that's what's always intrigued me about photo media more than anything else. So, you know, groupings of work here, so typically old world and so quintessentially Australian, and, you know, works in triptych as well. So I really wanted to break up the page design structure as much as I could through the book. I find that triptych arrangement, you know, particularly attractive in certain circumstances. You wouldn't necessarily show them like that in an art gallery, but in a book it just coheres and makes sense. So this quartet of images of my son in New York, in a bookshop bottom lefty, and then the others were shot in MoMA. And great thing about MoMA and a lot of galleries is that you can go in, take your camera and just photograph the whole place to death and no one's going to stop you, which is just such a bonus. Oops, more work of my kids. I hope this is not giving you guys vertigo. Here's some, you know, amateur horticulturalists. Yes, people destroying Australia. My God, you should go to that place now. Talk about an instant slum. If I wanted to hear from an arsehole, I would have farted. I just loved that. I had to photograph that. That's a double portrait of my daughter and her husband, where their eyes intersect. And, you know, dead things in Australia. Australia's just packed with... Australia's quite a primal country. It's packed with animals. A lot of roadkill in Australia, a lot of dead kangaroos on the road. Oh, it's just because there's so many, you know, they jump out of the forest. And you've got this narrow stretch of road, and then, you know, over to the other side of the forest, and, you know, a lot of times, you know, they intersect with cars in a very particularly nasty way. And don't know what happened to the baby dolphin, but they found it washed up on a beach down south, in southwest West Australia. A couple of photos of my son when we lived in London. With the giant yew hedge, it was about that scale thing, you know, that 19th century idea of showing scale. This must be the world's biggest yew hedge, and you know, little Jackie just emerging out of it. This is the street we lived in London, Muswell Hill, not far from Highgate, and it was actually a very steep hill. Because I'm shooting with a wide-angle lens, it flattens it out a bit, and the car's coming down the hill actually fairly fast, and Jack's saying to me, just as I'm taking the shot, said, "Dad, there's a car coming." And I said, "Look, it's okay, don't worry, you know, I've got it covered." Well, I'm seeing the car through the wide-angle lens, which makes it, you know, look quite slow. By the time I'd gone, you know, finished going click, Jack was just about a hood ornament. Anyway, I had to really talk him around that whole thing and get him back into the loop as, you know, one of my photographic models. Took a little bit of encouragement after that. Again, you know, driving around Australia in the car, you can see the, you know, after effects of some neglectful driving on my part, which, you know, my wife still likes to have a conversation about it from time to time when I'm driving particularly well. You know, picture on the right goes right back to art school in London in '71, where I fell head over heels in love with the girlfriend of my best friend who I was sharing a room with. Don't go there, you know, it's fatal to do that kind of thing. It's my son again, you know, he played his trick on me over the breakfast table. You know, we were having our cereal and he poked his tongue out with this, you know, disgusting thing on the end of his tongue. I said, "Oh, Jack, you know, hold that thought, we'll do that outside, we'll redo that later on." Again, you know, that's how you direct your kids when they'll listen to you. Yeah, shooting with plastic cameras, again, Paris and San Sebastian. Dodgy things happening in London parks, like getting raped, and again, you know, so many homeless teenagers when we were living there. Aboriginal Australia, people whose first language is a tribal language, and who can still speak native dialects, which are kind of disappearing. My beautiful wife, just not long after we gave birth to our first child when we lived in Brunei. She was working as a doctor in the Sultan of Brunei's medical service. She went on and became a pediatrician who specialized in tropical disease in kids. Here we've got the Southern Ocean, which is right down the bottom of Australia, and the Timor Sea on the left side, right up the top. Quite a few oceans and seas in the Australian geographic mix. Sorry about that. Oh God, it's tricky. Yeah, this is the view from my balcony at home. And objects have always been things that have fascinated me, particularly collecting objects that were so emblematic of events for me on my travels. I have a house full of these little things in glass cabinets, and I'm just crazy about them. Black and gold products. It's like a generic brand in Australian supermarkets. Some of the things are complete rubbish. You really wouldn't want to go near the cornflakes, for instance. I threw them out, but I really needed, I love the graphic design. I love the colour. I love the graphic design. I love the buy me or fuck off attitude that the people who run Black and Gold have. The fly-in insect killer is particularly effective. And it's the third price of everything else. Here on the left, I'm in an art gallery, a museum in Rome, and they had the effrontery to put up no photography allowed signs, and for me, it's a point of honour to photograph when I see those signs. And so while I was taking that photograph, a female guard, in those really sexy uniforms that semi-military people have in Italy, was screaming at me in Italian. I did my shot and of course turned around and pretended that I was a tourist from Bucharest, and of course it works every time. I never fess up to being a photographer. Always play the tourist card, and you're on safe territory. Just some, iconic heroes of the planet: Astro Boy, the Good Shepherd. My kids again, holding stuff. The Three of Clubs. I was just playing cards with the kids one day, and I came across this absolute masterpiece that my daughter had managed to organise because they'd lost the Three of Clubs, and stuff like that is just a gift from heaven, really. If you're interested in photographing funky little things your kids do. The rude set of playing cards I got in Hong Kong a few years ago, and these world famous sex worker ads that you find in London phone booths. I can recommend a trip to the Sex Museum in Amsterdam, well worth the €10 entrance fee. The enormous breast cream that I bought in the bazaar in Aleppo, which has sadly been reduced to rubble, and was absolutely magnificent. So you got this really big box, but with a tiny tube of breast-enhancing cream in it. I experimented with it, and as you can see, it doesn't work. It cost me a lot of money as well. These are just things I come across in France that relate to Australia. And here, there's this whole debate about, we have to get rid of the Union Jack, top left corner of the Australian flag. The Brits have been getting free advertising on the Australian flag now for, way too long. But no one can, work out what do we replace it with, or even, when do we become a republic? And I wouldn't wait up for that one. Fake things, lots of fake things out there that I find intriguing. Gift wrap toilet paper. How about Darky toothpaste? Absolutely unbelievable. Stuff like, Jesus loves you, Jennifer will give you a massage, love God. What's the other thing? Another massage. It's just crazy. My name on a factory in France. Couldn't believe that. And how about the Brontosaurus? I would suggest still there in the museum in Sutter Street in Calcutta, waiting for you. My wife just going berserk doing Sudoku on stage right. And my kids' toys, the little plastic doll here. While we were photographing, we had this Hitchcockian moment where a magpie flew down and plucked it out of her hand and flew off. I mean, the horror of it for her. Eka was 1984, so she was 3 years old, and it's still etched on her memory as, a really appalling moment from her childhood with posing with Dad. So I nearly got my son killed, and Eka's still mentally scarred from, the Hitchcockian incident, and still grieving for a little plastic doll. These are all books I've collected over the years. Mein Kampf in Japanese. Black Hole, got to be probably the best cover of a book ever done. Butt Magazine, probably one of the best, kind of fanzine, fagazine publications on the planet. Just beautifully designed and made. Still a virgin. I don't know, I didn't call up. Oh yeah, so this is my studio in Brooklyn. It had this little kind of old school TV in it, and that's pretty much how I felt there. And there's this really fancy gallery in upstate New York where all of the art gallery assistants wear Chanel suits, and they're, kind of debutantes from modeling school. And again, no photography allowed. So I'm just photographing everything, and the girls are really getting angry with me. And so going into this fabulous room that they've got set up for a video, and this white screen is absolutely vast. And I was chased in there by this, devastatingly gorgeous security guard, and stood there with my legs apart, did the shot, and again yelling at the back of my head, "Sir, you cannot, sir, you will have to be escorted from the premises." I got my shot, and I'm like, I'm ready to go, guilty. And of course the SHIT word, well, that's just photoshopped in afterwards. They didn't have that up there on the screen. I'm still waiting for them to sue me when the book comes out. And the last chapter, Islam v Asia. So it's really about, this beautiful belief system, Islam, and all of the benefits it's brought us historically, and of course this unbelievably, cool, okay, yeah, good. This unbelievably attractive culture that hosted Islam slowly over 500 years, and did it in a relatively seamless and acceptable way. And there's a lot of lessons, historic lessons we can learn from that process. And of course, we start off with of course, Islam at the height of its power in India, the Mughal dynasty, the quality of the architecture, the quality of the thinking of the the structure of the emperor, and the enlightenment of those, particularly those great Mughal emperors, those 4 great Mughal emperors that delivered that particularly visible, vibe of North India that you get now, because all those fabulous buildings are still there, as testament to the greatness of a system of governance that, was so fabulous in India for such a long period of time. Chandi Chowk, probably, one of my favourite streets on the planet. South Indian restaurants also pretty, fabulous gastronomic experiences. Beijing, people queuing to get into Mao's mausoleum. Karakoram Highway, which is, if you like mountains, that's your road. That road from Rawalpindi to up and beyond the Chinese border doesn't get too much better than that. Tibetan pilgrims, I did a pilgrimage to Kailash, Mount Kailash, in Western Tibet in 1999, and man, that was just an incredible trip for so many reasons. I did a book on that called No Hope, No Fear, and of course the double portraits, people in Humayun's tomb, New Delhi, Red Fort, New Delhi, Pakistan, bad spelling in Pakistan, Mahabalipuram, this Kashgar in China in the early 90s. I went to Kashgar a few times before it totally, they totally got rid of the classically beautiful old mud brick city. This is Dol Mala, the highest point on the Kora that you do around Mount Kailash. It's the highest I've ever been. It's about 5,800 meters. Burma. And kind of old school Max Pam. So this is me photographing with a tripod, 5-second exposures in Iran and then Peshawar. Mingora in Swat Valley, Harar in Ethiopia. So a lot of these pictures also talking about Indonesia. My second language is Indonesian. Indonesia is a secular state. It's the world's biggest Muslim country. It's a fascinating place with amazing ethnic and cultural diversity. I think Indonesia is kind of under the radar a bit, but I'm just amazed at how women play such a dynamic role in that culture, and remain devout Muslims. The way Islam plays out there is that classic case study of and tradition of the Sufis who brought Islam to that region from the get-go. I traveled in a lot of cultures through the Middle East, and I was always, made to feel incredibly welcome. This is Damascus, before it started to tear itself apart. not sure about that double page. Dubai is great. And so that's it. That's the book. It's probably it's probably going to look slightly different. I'm not sure, you know, because if the book's being published next year, then I'm still photographing it for it, and so maybe I'm going to have some, you know, hopefully, if I'm lucky, I'll score up, you know, 1 or 2 pics from Dhaka to put in the book. But that's pretty much how the book rolls for me. There's explanations on each chapter on where I'm coming from, you know, with the chapter, and it's probably my last big book. This is the biggest book I've ever done. There's about 300 pages in it. So anyway, you know, that's enough for me raving on about the book. If you guys have any questions, I'm certainly up for answering them. Otherwise, we can just call it quits.
Anybody have any questions? Maybe we can switch on the lights.
I'm sorry, I didn't get that. Could you?
May I ask you where you are originally from?
Oh yeah, no, I'm Australian. I was born there.
Anyone else?
Hello. I'm curious to ask something about the nude pictures. How come? What is the idea with photographing only women and no men? Or almost no men?
You mean no naked men?
Yeah.
It would probably speak to my sexual preference. You know, tell me something I don't already know about a guy. You know, I am a guy. I'm not interested in guys. I mean, does that answer your question? I'm just not interested in photographing guys. You know, I look at myself in the mirror every day. You know, I've been showered with my friends at school. You know, did nothing for me.
Max, we talked a lot about publishing while driving up and things like that, and how publishing changed and how difficult it is to get work out and things like that. Firstly, thank you for giving us an insight, because generally photographers tend to show finished work in some form. And while this is obviously finished work, it's also very raw in many senses. It's snapshots, things that say as much about you as it does about what you photograph, I think. But in terms of publishing, is there a niche for work of this sort? Is it because you have a relationship with this publisher, or would a photographer coming up today expect to find a publisher for work of this sort, or work that is personal, work that is much more freewheeling?
It would be difficult. You know, I spoke to people in the States who said, look, you know, it's going to be hard to show this work. It's going to be maybe easier to find a publisher. I don't know, but there seems to be in the States a background of puritanical weight that plays on a lot of publishers' minds. I know that for a fact, because I've had, you know, conversations with publishers who like my work and said, look, I just can't publish it because it'll, you know, create too many problems for us. It will damage our reputation, etc., etc. You know, which is in fact something you would never hear from a European publisher. But I'm not, you know, marking American culture or American publishers down for that. It's just how it rolls. You know, there's some places you can do stuff, other places you can't. And certainly in Australia you can publish this work. It's simply not an issue. It's going to be part of a public debate. It's going to create a response. I think a lot of publishers would see that as a way to sell more books. So, you know, I think that the intelligent publisher will see it as a plus, really, rather than a negative. But in Europe, it's just not even an issue. And I think that ultimately a lot of publishers are looking for that personal vision on how the planet rolls, because the big picture is so profoundly put to everyone these days. I mean, we're a very visually literate culture. You know, we see people are contesting the scene with cameras, with iPhones, with all sorts of apparatus which will record images and then broadcast them very, very quickly. I think the visual literacy of people is quite high, and I think that means that the personal vision becomes, you know, so much more powerful and interesting.
First of all, I would like to thank you. As I see outside in exhibition, I could see some pictures. They were not like they were white and black. Here I could see them colorful in the book. This one. The second thing that I saw, in the last chapter in your book, I could see like Islam and that stuff. You show so many naked girls. So is it like that in Asia, like in Islamic country? Is it like that or not? This is the second. The last one is, you show so many naked girls, even like you referred to your wife when you said you're my beautiful wife, but we couldn't see you naked in your book as well. Thank you.
Okay, so the first question is, I photographed black and white for 30 years, and at the turn of the century, you know, I got a divorce from black and white and married, you know, my new bride was color. And so for 13 years, that's the way I've been working. So that would explain the, you know, difference between the work out there and a lot of the color work here. So work out there would have been shot in the 20th century. A lot of the color work, all the color work you've seen here, shot in the 21st century. The second question, could you just rephrase that for me? Could you say that to me again, the second question?
The second question was about the last chapter, which was in Islam in Asia. Yep. We could see so many naked girls in the picture. So is it like in Asia, Islam is? Do they like naked girl have any kind of relation with Islam or what? Because it's like, you know, it's forbidden accordance with Islam rules.
Yeah. So you're talking about the naked girls, right? What I'm talking about, what I'm commenting on there is the mobility of women in Asia, and so the right of a woman to make a choice in terms of you know, if you look at the sex industry, say in like Southeast Asia, then girls got a choice of you know, working in a village and planting rice, or and she may be the, you know, 8th daughter of a large family. It's a patriarchal village. She's a very smart girl. Maybe the family's too poor to send her to high school, but she knows that she doesn't want to plant rice. She doesn't want to marry some guy who drinks too much and is going to mistreat her. So she gets on a bus, goes to Bangkok, and gets a job as I said, no, it doesn't necessarily get a job as a sex worker, because all of those girls in my pictures were freelancers. They were girls that I met in nightclubs and dance venues and various other places, just in restaurants. We, you know, when I was basically living in the same area as them, and I asked them to model for me, and the model fee was pretty much the going rate for, you know, sleeping the night with someone. So really, they're my models, they're my muses, and it could be Thailand, which is a Buddhist country. It could be Indonesia, which is, well, like I said, you know, the world's biggest Islamic country. But, you know, basically, you're dealing with the same human unit, you know. We all have different belief systems, but basically, we all come out of the same machine. There's not a whole lot that separates us in terms of human beings, and I reject the whole idea of people, you know, building these barriers between the things that connect us, which are, you know, the fact that really, you know, we are really a universal model. So, you know, for me, it's not about saying, you know, being disrespectful to Islam. That's not an issue for me. It's just commenting on the kind of life I lead, the kind of people I spend time with, the kind of people I meet in this part of the world, and they all exist. They're all real, and they're all actually very nice. So what was the other question? There were three. No?
It was
Only
the
two?
first one that I talked that.
Oh no, you said something about my wife, didn't you?
Yeah, yeah, and like we saw so many girls nagged, but you even referred to your wife, but not yourself in it. What's the reason behind that? You couldn't do that or what?
What? Photograph myself naked?
Yeah.
Oh, I know, I've done that.
Okay, so put it in the last chapter as well.
Just you know, I didn't look as good as my wife. No, I photographed I did a sequence of myself when I was at art school in London, rolling around on the carpet naked, and I figured I wouldn't go there again.
Max, one question, because you are traveling all over the world, and you know, in photography there is a say called that photographers are special kind of tourists. You know, they go to different places and they look for exotic things, and they take pictures in the surface level and they come back. And when I look at your pictures, you are traveling, of course, but there is a certain kind of intimacy, there's a certain kind of warmth, and there's a certain kind of magic I can see in your pictures. So how do you manage to get these moments? Because you are traveling from one place to another place. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's always, I mean, you know, I just love what I do. And I think that's the bottom line with it. I just felt I've lived a very privileged life, and it's been part of the process of you know, traveling to countries where I had absolutely no personal history at all, going out onto the street with my camera and making that connection, you know, because like I was saying before, that whole notion of universality, you know, where I can be walking down Sutter Street in Calcutta, and I make eye contact with someone, we smile at each other. I mean, that is such a beautiful and available connection that we all have, and you can be a long way from home and feeling maybe a little insecure, which was true when I was a young guy. But I would make eye contact with someone, and you know, they'd beat me to it in the smiling stakes. And so that smile said, you know, you're welcome here, you really belong here. And of course, you know, when you've got a camera, it's then easy to swing the camera around and actually get more out of that moment. So we'd stop, we'd talk, you know, we'd exchange stuff about what we're up to or doing. And this is anyone, a rickshawwala, guy from the bank. a guy in a restaurant, two guys in a restaurant, or two people on the street, you know, and so, you know, you'd have this lovely three-way conversation or two-way conversation, and it's that investment in human capital, you know, and meeting those lovely people and looking at, you know, the elegant way they dress, or you know, how Bengali women look, or how, you know, Bengali cuisine is prepared. That's the other thing. You sit down for a meal, you're eating the culture. All of that stuff for me was always very, very exciting. And so I guess what you do is you infect, you know, people with your own enthusiasm. But, you know, like I said, and, you know, a lot of people would you know, take one look at me and smile. And that smile said, yeah, you know, hi, you really do belong here. And well, I think that's the way it rolls for me on this planet. And that's really what I wanted to interrogate always with my camera, to come down to, you know, that basic human connection, that whole thing about, you know, we all want to love, we all want to be loved. I think that's, you know, that's probably the most profound truism out there.
My question is it possible to publish your book from this very Bangladesh? Because I have got points, several points over this very subject. This very country is being modernized, and this very courageous step would help a little bit more alike. And so, so many images belongs to Asia, and it would be rather a pioneer for Asians from Bangladesh. And so you would get publisher, I believe, and it would be rather the innovation which would be the gift from yourself to Bangladesh.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, that would be eminently possible, but I think my point with Bangladesh would be that why would I block the passage when there's so much, you know, talent right here, right now, actually contesting that the new direction of Bangladesh, the new soul of Bangladesh. Where is the new younger generation going to take this country, and how are they going to affect the social dynamic? And of course, what I've seen here at Chobimela, or what I've seen from Pathshala, from Drik, is that you know, you have the institutions here, some of them, which are going to create a generation of commentators who will remodel, you know, where Bangladesh is going. They're not going to throw out the, you know, the baby with the bathwater, but, you know, it'll evolve, and it'll evolve through, as you suggest, books that, you know, people will pick up and see as objects of beauty, and as revelatory objects. And I think, you know, there's so much talent here in Bangladesh that it would be bad for me to get in the way and take a book from a Bangladesh photographer who really deserves it more than me. So, but there are, you know, you've got, you know, the practitioners here already, and they're already doing those photos that are going to resonate. So I hope that answers your question.
Max, I've been hearing your name for a while. It's been 6 or 7 years that I've been hearing Max Pem's name from Australia, but haven't had the opportunity to see your images. Whenever we go to online, I'm sure some of my friends have the same problem. We see your name, we see a website that doesn't work, you know, that just puts few text on it. But today I have seen a lot. My question is rather about this book that you're publishing, Super Tourist. What about the chapters? How did you decide on the chapters? And is it a book about the whole tours of your life that you had, like the chronology of your work? Or, I mean, what is the idea behind it?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because you've got this archive that you built over 40 years, and it's substantive, and you think, how do I attack it? Where do I begin? It's like, when my wife is doing knitting, because her eyes are starting to fade, unfortunately, poor darling, and the wool gets really tangled. And so she calls me in to, do the troubleshooting on the wall, which drives me absolutely crazy. But, I'll do that with her, and, you fool around with a ball of wool for about 3 hours, and finally you got the thing worked out. It's a bit like that with the archive, but it's really smart to go in with some kind of concept on how you're going to work your archive. And for me, I just thought about the big picture issues that have concerned me consistently through the decades, because it's about 4 decades of work and it's about decades of application. And that they're always the big players for me. My obsession with objects, my long and enduring interest in Islam, my absolute love of Asia and its cultural density, which is really profound. And of course, with Australia, that God, where can I put my Australian and my European production? Because they are kind of detached from the monolithic Asia work. You could see a book about Asia that would work quite easily, but then how to factor in those other things. And I thought, I don't know when it came to me. It just the notion of old world, new world. Old world light and new world light are so different. And the minute you go to the airport at Perth, you smell the avgas fumes, it's exciting. You make the trip, you land somewhere, in the teeth of a winter blizzard. You've come from middle of summer in Perth, 40 degrees, you arrive in Paris and it's, about 0. And the light is really exciting. And so I get my camera out and start working right away. Those grey skies, that soft light, it's so different to that laser beam light at home. And so these are the things, part of the subtext is just something as basic as that in terms of old world, new world. But of course, as I suggested, the Australia I really love and enjoy is that primal Australia. And, there pretty much is no primal Europe unless you're a mountaineer. Well, it depends on your definition of Europe, I suppose, but my definition of it. So, armed with those with those headings, it just made it so much easier to go through the archive without having a nervous breakdown and wondering if I'd ever get out of the filing cabinet alive. So yeah, I mean that and I think it's something I learned probably teaching at the university. I got a lot out of we did just basic research techniques. So I think as your archive grows, you really need a way to manage it. An Australian publisher did my last big book, which was called Atlas Monographs, but that was really entirely about Asia. I've just had another book published in Australia called Narcolepsy, which is kind of like a graphic novel. That was published in Sydney. I've got 1, 2, 3 books published in Australia and 10 books published overseas. Australia is tough nut to crack in terms of publishers. I don't know why. A lot of people, are into books in Australia. I just think that, there's this inherent laziness in print media in Australia. They just go for the easy options. you know, Steve Waugh's photographs of Pakistan, Australia's Red Heart. You know, any cliche book is going to sell thousands of copies, and so publishers love that. And I look at my thing and think, we'll sell about 15 of these. You know, no thanks. So yeah, but I have had some books published there, and you know, quite big books.